This is Cam Ranh. For travel enthusiasts, the name often evokes images of a serene bay with blue sea, white sand, and luxurious resorts basking under the blazing sunshine of the south-central coast. But beyond that charming beauty, Cam Ranh also carries the role of one of the world's most strategic naval bases, a place likened to the key to controlling the South China Sea. In fact, throughout history, controlling this bay has always been the aspiration of many global powers. But why? To begin, let's go back to 1888. And imagine yourself as an honest fisherman living in a small coastal village in central Vietnam. Your days usually pass in peace, setting out to sea in the morning, mending your nets in the afternoon, and drinking a few cups of wine in the evening while sharing stories with old friends. Until one day, from the distant horizon, you see something slowly approaching. That strange object looks even larger than the mythical whale that villagers in Vietnam often speak of. It was the battleship Varyag, one of the prides of the Russian Imperial Navy on its journey around the world. And you could never have imagined that this seemingly chance encounter would mark the beginning of a painful saga. From a quiet fishing village, your homeland of Cam Ranh would turn into a strategic pawn that global powers sought to seize. In 1905, during the Russo-Japanese War, more than 100 warships of Moscow's Second Pacific Fleet gathered here before heading straight to the Tsushima Strait to engage the Japanese Navy. After the war, Tokyo's ambitions to expand into the South China Sea became a concern for the French government, those who were colonizing Vietnam at the time. To secure their interests, they sent Navy Captain Philomelos to establish a naval base in Cam Ranh in 1911. Nearly 2 decades later, as World War II loomed, fearing the tide of fascism would sweep across, the colonial authorities decided to upgrade the naval base into a major stronghold as part of the Joint Defense Plan in Indochina. But just over a year later, on September 15, 1940, Japan sent an ultimatum demanding the French leave if they did not want to face the full wrath of the Empire of Heaven. As usual, Paris raised the white flag, and by 1942, Japan had taken control of Cam Ranh, turning it into an important springboard for striking directly at Malaysia, then a British colony. When World War II ended, it seemed as if the skies over the bay would be clear again. But that never became reality. When the French decided to return to Indochina, they brought not only weapons but also the ambition of reviving their colonial chessboard. On October 18, 1946, at the very naval base in Can Hoa, President Ho Chi Minh and the French High Commissioner Darjean Leo held a meeting to discuss Vietnam's independence. But then, Cam Ranh did not become a place to open the path of peace. Instead, it continued to be listed among the key military bases that the Paris government wanted to hold on to at all costs. By 1948, the upgrade of this base was officially launched. Under orders from the Commander-in-Chief to the French Expeditionary Forces in the South China Sea, infrastructure here was to be built to accommodate the stationing of about 10,000 troops, a number large enough to show that Cam Ranh had now become a true fortress in the eyes of Paris. However, what must come will come, and for the French, it was time once again to pack up. Just like the old script in 1954, after being taught a historic lesson by the Viet Minh at Dien Bien Phu, the army from the Hexagon country cheerfully surrendered and quietly packed up their gear to leave. It was thought that after this less-than-romantic farewell with the French, Cam Ranh would return to the arms of the Vietnamese. But no, the game was not over yet. This time, the S-shaped land had to struggle against the intervention of a power far more formidable than Paris. That was the United States. And with the strategic minds of military masters, Cam Ranh was nothing less than a juicy bait laid out for Washington. From 1965 to 1972, the Americans poured money into Cam Ranh like water, aiming to turn it into an impregnable base. A center for supplies, logistics, and weapons storage to serve the war in the South, while also controlling the entire western corridor of the Pacific. The peak of this careful investment came in 1969, during a visit to U.S. allies in South Vietnam. President Lyndon Johnson personally stopped at Cam Ranh. Perhaps at that moment, The White House boss wanted to see with his own eyes just how big the fighting cock he himself had raised had grown. And the result was probably enough to leave Johnson satisfied. At that time, Cam Ranh was not just a base, but an entire military city. 2 jet airfields, 1 helicopter airfield, each capable of housing more than 100 aircraft. The Americans even carved into mountains to hide planes and extended runways long enough for B-52 bombers to operate with ease. That was on the air front. As for the sea, Cam Ranh was elevated with deepwater port complexes, allowing the reception of U.S. warships and massive arms supply vessels. According to many documents, between 1965 and 1975, Cam Ranh was the key logistics hub for the Saigon government. Weapons and essential goods from the U.S. and Western allies were mostly shipped here by sea before being distributed to depots scattered across South Vietnam. Not only that, the base also housed multiple fuel depots, ammunition warehouses, tank overhaul workshops, modern radar systems, and an international communications network through undersea cables connecting to Thailand and the Philippines. Alongside the Americans, Cam Ranh also saw participation from the South Vietnamese Navy. Washington allowed Saigon to use the naval port as an operational base and helicopter training center under Naval Region 2. All of this turned Cam Ranh into a massive military complex, one that anyone who heard of it had to take seriously. However, every party eventually ends. In 1972, after the Paris Agreement, the Americans were forced to withdraw from Vietnam. Cam Ranh Naval Base was handed over to the Saigon government. But just 3 years later, the campaign to completely liberate the South and reunify the country was victorious. The Vietnam People's Army officially took control of Cam Ranh. Although the facilities were severely damaged after the war, Cam Ranh still held special appeal for naval powers. And this time, another major player in the UN Security Council gained access to this strategic port. In 1979, Hanoi and Moscow signed a historic agreement allowing the Soviet Union to use Cam Ranh as a logistics and technical supply station for the Pacific Fleet for a term of up to 25 years. The naval base in Can Hoa province entered a new chapter, the era when the Russian bears planted their flag in the South China Sea. Under the agreement, the Soviets could simultaneously station 8 to 10 warships and up to 8 submarines there, including nuclear submarines. For the Air Force, Moscow could use Cam Ranh as a base for attack aircraft, reconnaissance planes, helicopters, and transport aircraft to support the operations of the Pacific Fleet. Depending on the regional situation and bilateral agreements, the scale of military presence could be flexibly adjusted. By 1986, the Soviet air contingent here had reached an impressive size, with the presence of a mixed air regiment that included more than 20 strategic bombers, such as Tu-95, Tu-142, and Tu-16, 15 MiG-25 fighters, 2 An-24 transport aircraft, and 3 Mi-18 helicopters. This formidable force easily made Cam Ranh the largest Soviet military base abroad. But unlike the Americans, who often left behind abandoned airfields or empty warehouses after each withdrawal, during its entire presence, the Soviets continuously built permanent structures, technical facilities, and modern military infrastructure. Not only serving immediate purposes, Moscow also left Cam Ranh with a message of goodwill. One day when we withdraw, this place will be yours. And they kept their word. According to many sources, when the Russian Navy withdrew from Cam Ranh, Moscow handed over to Vietnam a relatively complete infrastructure system, from barracks, warehouses, power lines, and underground facilities to piers and airfields. On May 4, 2002, the last Russian soldiers bid farewell to Cam Ranh after nearly a quarter of a century stationed there. The naval base was handed back to Hanoi, not only with concrete and steel, but also with the trust that this place would continue to grow and become a firm stronghold for Vietnam's position in the future. The turbulent history of Cam Ranh has seen this naval base become home to forces from 3 out of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. So what has made Can Hoa's beautiful base so attractive? The answer can be summed up in 3 main factors: its strategic location, ideal natural conditions, and immense geopolitical significance. Let's begin with Cam Ranh's location. This is the South China Sea, a body of water that holds a leading strategic role in the geopolitical chessboard of the 21st century. Not only is it a security hotspot, but it is also a lifeline route for global trade. According to data from 2002, goods worth around $5.3 trillion flowed through this region annually, including 1/3 of the world's crude oil and more than half of its liquefied natural gas. For China alone, about 60% of its total goods and 70% of its imported oil were transported through this area. This makes the South China Sea not merely a sea, but an economic and energy lifeline for Beijing's survival. And Cam Ranh Bay, located less than an hour away from those critical maritime routes, is the ideal position to observe and influence every move. In fact, if you draw a circle from the center point of Cam Ranh reaching major container ports like Singapore, Shanghai, Yokohama, or Hong Kong, you will easily see the central position of this naval base in Canhua. This means that whichever nation controls Cam Ranh also holds the ability to monitor and, if necessary, intervene in the flow of global commerce. That is also the dream every major power has long aspired to. Beyond its economic value, Cam Ranh also carries immense military significance. Some defense experts argue that controlling Cam Ranh is akin to holding the key to the South China Sea, the Strait of Malacca, or even extending surveillance to the northern Indian Ocean, the Persian Gulf, and the East China Sea. For this reason, Cam Ranh is not only a cornerstone of Vietnam's national security and defense, but also a critical link in the strategy of safeguarding global maritime freedom. Its position is clear, but some might ask why such a naval base can only be located at Cam Ranh and not at another site in Vietnam's south-central coast. The answer lies in its nearly perfect natural conditions, something unmatched by any other bay in the region. As Rear Admiral Le Cay Lum once affirmed, for Vietnam, long ago, now, and forever after, Cam Ranh is a natural port for Vietnam, fully qualified to be the best naval base, truly of the highest strategic importance. Reality has fully proven this assessment correct. Looking at the map, one can immediately see the privilege that nature has bestowed upon Cam Ranh Bay. Cam Ranh rises between 400 and 1,000 meters, wrapping around like two mighty arms embracing the entire area, shielding it from outside threats. According to Colonel Nguyen Don Hoa, former Deputy Chief of Naval Engineering, when storms at sea reach level 5 to 6, the wind inside the bay does not even reach level 3. This means that ships sheltered in the port are always protected from the ravages of natural disasters. Moreover, the bay's entrance is narrow while its basin is deep, a perfect natural combo for a fortress. This terrain creates an excellent defensive system, both shielding and making it easy to control, preventing any illegal intrusion. Conversely, from within the bay, defending forces can readily launch attacks when necessary. Beyond its ideal terrain, Cam Ranh is also one of the world's rare natural deepwater bays. With a water surface area of up to 100 square kilometers, common depths ranging from 16 to 25 meters, and some areas reaching 32 meters with no reefs at all, it allows large warships and transport vessels, even over 100,000 tons, to enter, maneuver, and anchor with ease in any weather. Thanks to this vast space, the naval base is capable of simultaneously accommodating up to 40 large warships, including aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. In short, if one must choose a place to establish a key naval base in the South China Sea, Cam Ranh's natural endowments make it the perfect choice. Finally, it is impossible not to mention the strategic value Cam Ranh brings in the context of intensifying global power competition. With its prime location along the international maritime axis and proximity to hotspots such as the South China Sea, the Strait of Malacca, and the East China Sea, Cam Ranh stands out as a VIP seat in the security control room of the Indo-Pacific. Whoever secures that seat, or even leans on its armrest, will gain a huge advantage in monitoring and swiftly responding to regional developments. Above all, Cam Ranh remains a central stage in the grand play called the competition for influence among major powers, the United States, China, Russia, and India. No one wants to be absent from this game, and no one wants to let their rivals take the upper hand. In short, Cam Ranh is not merely a naval base. It is a place where soft power and hard power converge, where national advantages, freedom of navigation, and the calculated moves of a global contest in the 21st century all intersect. With the strategic advantages Cam Ranh holds, the question now is, will Vietnam simply allow this port to become a pawn in the power plays of great nations? The answer is certainly no. Hanoi fully understands the strategic value of Cam Ranh, not only as a military hub, but as a focal point that draws the world's attention. And because they understand, they are even more cautious, for without careful control, this place could easily turn into an arena for foreign maneuvers, with the host nation left on the sidelines. That is why Vietnam has chosen to maintain strategic balance, refusing to lean fully toward any one side, while at the same time maximizing the advantages that Cam Ranh provides. This strategy is no coincidence, but rather built firmly on the foundation of Hanoi's Four No's defense policy. No participation in military alliances, no siding with one country against another, no foreign military bases on Vietnamese soil, and no use or threat of use of force in international relations. Thanks to these four no's, Cam Ranh has not become anyone's pawn. On the contrary, this naval port has become a strategic card for Hanoi itself in shaping the tangled geopolitics of the 21st century. A prime example of this calculation is the transformation of Cam Ranh into a technical service center, where warships from many nations can dock for maintenance, refueling, or oil changes with trusted reliability. It is rare to find another naval base in the world with such a diverse roster of clients. One day it may be a U.S. aircraft carrier, the next a Russian missile ship, and the day after, a Chinese destroyer. All nationalities, all levels of modernity converge here. Everything takes place on equal and transparent terms, with no discrimination between partners. But most importantly, there is no permanent military garrison. This policy not only allows Hanoi to safeguard its independence and territorial sovereignty, but also makes the international community view the S-shaped land as a trustworthy partner, one ready to contribute to peace, stability, and freedom of navigation in the region. With such advantages, Cam Ranh is not just a naval port, but a strategic diamond on the geopolitical map of the Asia-Pacific. It is no surprise then that many great powers covet a foothold here. Yet Hanoi has made clear, past, present, and future, that it will not allow the port to become a tool for any outside force. Cam Ranh does not close itself off from the world, but within this bay, there is only one set of rules, and those rules are determined by Vietnam.